This week, Geminate settles down. Rorquals undock to become targets. I struggle to find a name for the Southern Super Coalition. The war in the southeast fails to pick up pace, and I report on the 80 feeder rounds that took place last weekend. Hello pod people, I'm Frost, and this is your weekly EVE Online update. Welcome back. As always, we start off by announcing the winners of the Scope Syndication skins. They were Abaddon skins for last week's prize draw winners. Now, as you can see, I don't have any tunes in their finest garments to show off because neither of my winners have come forward to claim their skin. So, Raf Daclaw and Chris Williams, those are your YouTube names. You need to get in touch with me on my Discord so I can give you those Abaddon skins. Those are the last two Abaddon skins I was giving away, as well as we have a new skin for this month. And I will give you more details on that later on in the show. All right, so let's get underway. So first thing I need to say is that things are definitely a lot quieter in EVE at the moment. I think everyone is aware of that. I think it's a culmination of things that we have, the fact that we have like national holidays, which are the last ones of the summer for lots of different countries. I mean, the UK had a bank holiday last weekend. It's Labor Day this weekend in the US. And so people are taking their families out before going to school, etc., etc. On top of that, we had the Alliance Tournament feeder rounds, which took place last weekend, which I'll be talking a little bit about, and I will be doing a spoiler alert for that as well. And obviously, we have a lot of FCs and stuff that are involved in that, and so they're very focused on that rather than actually doing fleets. But stuff has still happened, and as always, I'm going to jump up into my box. And we're going to go in a big sort of circle. So that's kind of the way I'm working. I'm kind of starting in the northeast, and I'm going all the way around and going kind of like in a sort of concentric circle like that. So we're going to start off with Cloud Ring. So what's happening in Cloud Ring? When Cloud Ring, we have Deepwater hooligans have kind of been harassing Triumvirate, and it's kind of been taking place on this border between Syndicate and Cloud Ring. And I actually have a battle report somewhere here. And this actually took place on the 29th. So I missed this last week and I should have reported on it, but I just didn't get the info on it. Quite a big fight. It was a capital fight. As you can see, we had some pretty big losses happening there. Let me see if I can get my pen working. There we go. So 110 billion to 54 billion. So, you know, with some caps undocked, we had a sort of a dread bomb on both sides. And but things aren't really making any progress. So, you know, Triumvirate are kind of able to hold off there, and we'll have to take a look at that and see if that kind of develops further. But that is actually one of the conflicts that is happening right now in the EVE universe over in the Northwest. Obviously, the big one that I was talking about last week is in the Southeast, and we'll come on to that a little bit later. So what I want to do is I want to talk about Geminate. So we touched on Geminate last week. We were primarily talking about Brave getting settled in, having pushed Darkside out of this region, along with the help of Pandemic Horde. There has been a couple of fights involved in the meantime on psychotic tendencies. That's right, so Tissue were down here in this constellation here, and they got pushed out. Now they tried to kick back, and I have another battle report right here. It was a big Ferox fight, so I'm glad I wasn't involved in that one. You know how I feel about the Ferox. But interestingly enough, so we had a Brave Collective on one side doing an iHub defense, and then on the other side we had the Imperium who showed up for that in Feroxes. But the real losers of this one were actually Psychotic Tendencies, who decided to drop a whole bunch of carriers, as you can see right here, onto a whole bunch of Ferox fleets. Now I don't know who actually shot them. I should have actually checked the killmails, whether it was just Brave or whether it was the Imperium as well. In fact, let me see if I can take a quick look at that and see if we can see. So it looks like Brave only were doing the shooting there. Let's just scroll the way down. Yeah, so it's just only Brave. But either way, they came out the worst losers of that, having lost 1, 2, 3, 4 carriers in that fight. So that's pretty much it for Geminate. But the other thing I wanted to just show as well is I talked about last week about Fraternity, and I think they kind of had a couple of systems here, and it looks like they've taken another one. So I'm not quite sure what's going on there, whether Fraternity had decided, because obviously Lord are part of Winter Coalition up in the north here, in the northwest of the region, whether Fraternity had decided, you know what, we've got some sod there, we might as well just keep it. So I'll be keeping an eye on Geminate and seeing how Brave get along with kind of getting settled there. Then we're going to go over to Malpais. So let me go back to my universe map. So Malpais is pretty quiet. It's the drone lands. It's kind of NC Dot territory, and Pandemic Legion are up there as well. But in the system of YMTAC, which is actually used by Reckless Contingency, there was a extra large ship maintenance array, and Triumvirate managed to find it, and they actually killed it. But unfortunately, there was a ratting hell in there, and it didn't drop. So that was poor luck there, but it did belong to Brothers of Tangra, who are renting Alliance. So that looks like that was there for ages, and potentially even Reckless Contingency weren't aware of it. It was just a dead stick, just sitting there, waiting to be destroyed. So obviously Reckless Contingency wouldn't be able to shoot it, as they're associated to NC Dot and Brothers of Tangra being the renter alliances of the Renter Alliance group of Northern Coalition. Right, so then we're going to go on to Outer Passage. So with Outer Passage, as you know, we talked about last week that, where is Outer Passage? There we go. The tests were getting themselves settled in. They're pretty much done now, as you can see. But what has really been happening here with test is that there's been lots of whaling going on. So if we actually go to my Capitals tab and go to the raw core losses, you can see that they had a period on August 31st and September the 1st where, let me just cut that one out, there we go, where a whole bunch of raw cores were dying kind of back to back. And literally everyone was taking a pop at this. You know, we had Dread Bomb, we had Fraternity, we had the Initiative with Goon Swarm as well. Yeah, literally everybody was having a go at those. Now then they kind of died off. I heard rumors that potentially they were told not to undock the raw cores. That was short-lived. As September the 5th, we see that there's raw cores there again. So I don't know whether that was actually a fact or just everyone just kind of docked up and decided to be safe for a few days and wait for things to blow over. The main thing though is that we're seeing a good number of raw cores being undocked. You know, now that the war in the southwest between PAPI and the Imperium has come to an end in terms of the attack on Delve. We're obviously seeing a lot more of the mining and ratting kind of start to pick up speed again. So I would imagine, you know, whaling is going to be the primary activity for a lot of the alliances at the moment in terms of generating content. For those of you not familiar with whaling just means going after ratting ships and mining ships and going on roams either through wormholes or just taking the long way around and shooting at stuff to either kill the actual raw cores and ratters themselves or to generate a fight by creating a response fleet. So I think that brings us up to date on that. I actually have a battle report again, another one. This was interesting because these were actually 3 separate fleets. So we had Goon Swarm in one fleet, we had the Initiative in another fleet, and then we had Wrecking Crew show up in another fleet. The Bastion Tactical Narcotics being part of the Imperium, so they'd have been in the Goon Swarm fleet, I would imagine. Obviously the Initiative are also part of the Imperium, but generally fly their own fleets. We also got Get Off My Lawn and Dracaris, which are also part of the Imperium. So basically we had the Imperium, we had Wrecking Crew, so everyone was kind of showing up to kind of whale on these raw cores, and then Test were bringing out their defense fleets and dropping, not supers, but dropping just purely carriers on that. But they weren't able to save the 3 raw cores, as you can see down the bottom there. I think there were more than that, but 3 definitely died. But that's kind of giving you an idea of what's going on with Outer Passage as kind of testers settling themselves into that region. But yeah, lots of raw core kills, and that's always good for the game. It keeps everything going. Right, I think we'll do it nice and early this week. We'll drop straight into the giveaway because I have a new ship skin. It is the Tempest. So another battleship skin, but with the Tempest, it just means that whilst you're sitting on tether on a structure, waiting for your structure to be attacked, you can show to everybody that you got a cool Scope Syndication skin. And the way you win the skin is you have to put in a YouTube comment down below with a keyword, and you have to make up a sentence with that keyword. And the keyword I'm going to use this week is drop. So obviously we've had raw cores dropped on. We're going to see there was a Titan that was dropped on a little bit later on. So the word drop, you don't have to use it in the case of Eve. You can use it in any way you want at the moment. It's polite, please. So D-R-O-P, drop. Use your imagination and come up with the great content and comments to keep not only myself but everyone else that reads them amused. All right, so I think we'll move on from there now. We'll go back to my map. Okay, we're going to go to Catch. So in Catch, I have a little bit of news, but I wasn't able to verify. It's not one of those things that I can verify, but we have the system of GE-TAC-8JV. Now, this used to be the capital system of Brave when Brave Collective were in catch. And they still have a keepstar there. And that keepstar got reinforced. Now, I understand that at the same time that got reinforced, a timer was actually coming out for an unanchoring of a CTO. And I think it was Red Menace Coalition who were primarily there, but I think the Imperium may have been there as well, reffing this keepstar. And the CTO unanchoring timer wasn't cancelled, and therefore it dropped. And because they had grid control, they were able to scoop the CTO. So that was a free CTO. I don't know whether it went to Red Menace Coalition or to the Imperium, but my understanding is that it was scooped. Also in catch, I'm just going to keep you up to date on structures that are dying, that the Imperium is still continuing their cleanup, although that has slowed a lot recently. There was a Brave Fortizar destroyed in BUZ-DB, which is, if you're just interested, it's just down there in Drakari space. Okay, so then we're going to go and talk about the Southern Super Coalition. So last week, you click on my universe button, I was talking about Wrecking Crew, who are a coalition that are based primarily in Providence and Catch. Then we have RMC, which is Red Menace Coalition, who are in Impasse. And then we have PIBC, who are in Omist and Fetherbolis. And I think Red Menace Coalition as well, actually kind of also a little bit in Fetherbolis. And also there's Esoteria as well, and I can't even remember who's in Esoteria now. It's PIBC, there we go. So between all these groups, they basically hold kind of all of this area here. And I said last week that PIBC were folding into Wrecking Crew. Now, that was my understanding at the beginning. It was very confused messages, but I now understand that is not the case. So what we have is we have a super coalition. We have 3 coalitions working in tandem versus Fire Coalition, who are in Scalding Pass, Wicked Creek, Tenerifis, Inn's Mother, I think I mentioned them all. And then we've got Immensia, which is kind of a bit of a melting pot at the moment. So coming back to this group, I was trying to find a name. The best I could come up so far was RMP, simply for RE for Wrecking Crew, RM for Red Menace Coalition, and PI for PIBC. I also thought about Southern Crew, might be a good name. I would like it if maybe the coalitions themselves would give me a name. That would be awesome that I could use. As it is a bit of a mouthful mentioning those 3 coalitions, back to back every time I'm talking about them. So yeah, if you can come up with a name, maybe come up with some suggestions in the YouTube comments, keep them polite again, please. That would be good. So, but for the time being, I think I'm going to go with RMP. Now, the situation between RMP and Fire has actually been pretty quiet. There was potentially a mention of Wrecking Crew kind of making an advance over the Labor Day weekend, which was this weekend that's just passed. But that didn't seem to really happen. So things have gone a little bit quiet there at the moment. It's also going to be interesting to see with Fetherbolis what goes on. As you can see, it is a bit of a mess because we have, let's see, we have PIBC down here in pink. We then have Red Menace Coalition in blue. I think RLH are involved with the Red Menace Coalition as well. And then obviously we then got XIX over on this side, who have got kind of a sort of smattering of stuff. Now, I would imagine that XIX are just going to pull out from Fetherbolis. They have no real reason to be there. It was initially due to them pushing out Invidia Gloria Comes, which was all of the area that you've seen that XIX hold now. That was initially held by Invidia Gloria Comes after Test kind of moved out, or Legacy Coalition moved out of Fetherbolis back in the day. So I don't think they're going to stay there, and I would imagine that this is going to flip over either to IMC, maybe to PIBC or Wrecking Crew. So I'll be keeping an eye on that and seeing what happens with Fetherbolis. So as I said, otherwise it's not really, it's kind of stalled. We thought we were going to see like a big advance with these 3 coalitions now kind of ganging up against Fire, that we're going to see kind of an all-out assault, but that hasn't happened. It's all fizzled a bit at the moment. And in fact, if I can find the right battle report, I have quite a fair few. Where was this one? No, that's Sustain. Here we go. So there was a fight in Tenerifis. It happened in DZ6 and QCDH. DZ6 is held by XIX. It's normally where they hold a jump bridge to get towards QCDH, QCDG-H is held by Dragon Dynasty. I don't know where the fight started off, but the interesting thing here is that it's in Siege Green. There was basically Fire Coalition having a fight with Siege Green. What is really interesting is the time. It's at 11 a.m. UTC, which is kind of pretty early for even the Russian-speaking alliances. It's kind of very much in Siege Green's time zone. So that's the Korean stroke Asian time zone. So Siege Green being a Korean group, as I remember correctly, a South Korean group. So interesting that they're going out and looking for fights with Siege Green. And like I said, I don't know who was involved with it. I don't know whether it was Dragon Dynasty and kind of, Fire Coalition came to the resistance, or it just kind of started off in DZ6 and maybe Siege Green moved into QCDG. Unfortunately, I got this last minute, so I'm not quite sure exactly what's going on. So I was just checking my screen now. I was making sure that my recording was still going correctly, especially after last week when I had kind of some meltdowns, things went a bit sideways. This time it's all the equipment's holding well, even though it's really hot today. Okay, so let's go back to our map. We're going to go over to Quirius. We're going to talk about Quirius quickly. So with Quirius, I'm not even going to bother going to the system. I just want to bring up to date. Another test keepstar was destroyed. Test keepstar was destroyed in Quirius. There were a couple of Fortizars destroyed as well. One belonged to Test, one belonged to Brave, and 2 Sutias as well. One belonging to Brave, one belonging to Horde. The bigger news is then if we move into Lowsec. So in Lowsec, in Carnid, there was a keepstar in Ermelin. Now, Ermelin was the first jump point out of Delve for PAPI. So you could jump from T5ZI to Ermelin. Now, this is for super capitals. And what this means is with this test keepstar being destroyed in Ermelin, any super capitals that was still left in T5ZI, and it's quite possible there are still some left, even if they log in now, there isn't a keepstar in T5ZI that was destroyed. It was one of the first things to be destroyed after the PAPI withdrawal. They would have ended up in space, but they could have still potentially jumped if they had a signer ready straight to Ermelin. Now they can't do that. There is no test keepstar in Ermelin anymore. Obviously, capitals can still jump out. There's NPC stations, but it means now that super capitals are really, really stuck if they are still in Delve that belong to PAPI, or ex-PAPI should we now say. There was a Titan that actually died next door in Iridia, over here. I have the killmails somewhere up here, if I can find it. There we go. So it was a Horde Titan. It died in Malpais. So Malpais, if I remember correctly, let me just squiggle that properly. There we go. I think it was another jump point in kind of the PAPI chain, but it looks like it was caught by a Black Ops from White Sky, and they managed to then get some Battle Rorks in there, some broadswords to get a proper point on it, and then some Dreads came in, including a Sinatra, nice ship, to kill the Titan. As you can see, it was in full travel fit, trying to boost up its cap as quickly as possible, all the movement mods, etc., and the cloak as well. But unfortunately, it got caught. I don't know the circumstances of it. It was the only Titan death this week. And moving Titans, especially if you don't have keepstars to dock into, is pretty sketchy. It's always very nerve-wracking. Okay, so then we're going to go back to our map, and we're going to go and talk about Bleak Clans and Sync Liaison. So if you remember, we had a sort of an ongoing conflict going on between Nullsec, Niall, Shalukan, and Dock Workers. And it basically, NSH were based in Sync Liaison, Dock Workers were in the Bleak Clans, but they were in jump range of each other. And it then eventually kind of boiling around Sync Liaison. So it's right down the bottom of the map here in Shuasana. And we ended up with a situation where both NSH and Dock Workers had Fortizars in the same system. And we've kind of reached a point where we have a stalemate now. So there was an attempt to drop an Astra House on the NSH Fortizar grid. And let me see if I can find the battle report. Here it is. And it was pretty much the biggest fight that they had. So it did actually escalate to carriers and things. The Astra House was unfortunately destroyed. That could have potentially changed the situation, that if they'd managed to get an Astra House on grid with the Keepstar, the Fortizar, Then they could have deployed the carriers to the Astra House, turned it up on the Astra House, and then Skyneted onto the Fortizar, all their fighters, and then potentially destroyed it. But they're unfortunately unable to do that. So we kind of got a stalemate at the moment, and things got a little bit quiet. Also, as I said, the Alliance tournament is taking up the time of some of these teams, although I think both teams have been knocked out now. We'll have to check in a minute. But either way, not much going on there. They kind of reached that stalemate where they don't know whether they can destroy each other's Fortizars and maybe are unwilling to commit the level of ships that are necessary to be able to take that fight. So we'll have to keep an eye on it. I'm sort of getting feedback on what's going on there. One thing I wanted to mention from last week as well was in Fountain. I wanted to just talk about the initiative. I forgot to mention this, that the initiative got a bump in membership, and it was actually about 500 members. Now, for the initiative, it's not that big a deal. It's kind of taken from 5,000 to 5,500, but it was more where they all came from. That they all came from Dark Side of the Eclipse, which basically was originally 650 members, and to lose 500 members, is a big chunk, and they've actually lost a few more since in the last week. So I don't know what that means for Dark Side of the Eclipse, whether we're going to see them kind of maintaining it as an alliance, or whether we're going to see the last few groups disappear and actually see that alliance disband, which is never good, seeing alliances disband, but it was good obviously for the initiative. They got a few more numbers. Then random death, I wanted to point out, a Marshal got ganked in, once again, Uedama, which is just so dangerous. It was actually ganked by Goonswarm, so Goonswarm were out in high sec doing some ganking and catalysts. But what was unfortunate with this was that not only was it fitted with loads of faction mods, and it was dual tank as well. You can see we've got, let me turn off my pen. We've got an armor tank on there, we have a shield tank on there, we have one rig for shield, we have one rig for armor. So super tanky as much as it could be. I still got ganked, and it was carrying loads of faction mods. And a whole chunk of them dropped, so 6 billion of them dropped. So that was a good ganking run there by Goonswarm. So yeah, unfortunate death for that Marshal. Right, so now we're going to go back. Let me just come bring up my map again. We're going to do spoiler alert. So I'm going to be talking about the AT feeder rounds. What I'm going to do is I'm going to put a time right here, and this time is where this segment of the show ends. So if you don't want to know about this, jump to this time and you'll be good, and you'll skip past this a little bit. Okay, so the AT feeder rounds, here we go. So it all happened over the weekend. The viewers was good numbers on the viewers. When I was watching, it ranged between 2,500 to 3,500 viewers. It ran Saturday through Sunday. You could probably still catch it all on Twitch if you want to. On CCP's stream, so that's twitch.tv/CCP. And it went on from like 1,400 to 2,000 on both days, I think. Now, the things that were interesting here, some big groups were kind of knocked out. So the Initiative were knocked out pretty on the very beginning, and Dark Shines was actually kind of the first big name death of the show, with actually being the first ship to die in the AT tournament. They lost over to Psychotic Tendencies, which is Tissue, which actually made it all the way to the end. Now, I'm not going to go into all the details here. I'm actually just going to talk about kind of the big things. So Test, which is one of the big groups, did get knocked out, as did, so Test is over here. My team actually fought against Test, so I got knocked out. And unfortunately, as piloting, we didn't do anything wrong. We just got the perfect counter to what the doctrine that we brought. And those Ishtars caused us loads of problems. They were actually able to do max damage on us with their drones whilst we were shooting at range, so we couldn't put out the same DPS towards them, and they basically eventually overwhelmed us. I'm thinking it through in hindsight, maybe we could use the jump beacons, but then we had the Stalk Armors on grid, and they could have potentially tackled us, and then we would have been able to use the jump beacons, and then that would have been a disaster as well. So hindsight is a great thing, but it was good fun. I enjoyed taking part in it. But I got knocked out. Another star, kind of well-known person that got knocked out was jin'taan. jin'taan was with Foxholers. Now, Foxholers were using a different name. I think it was Outfox. Here we go. So they were down here, and they were knocked out by Entropic Thunder. So big groups that got knocked out. We had Pandemic Horde got knocked out. Like I said, Test got knocked out as well. and the Initiative. A couple of big groups did go through. Fraternity did well and showed themselves to be quite a strong team. And then Northern Coalition were also doing very well. They had a pretty full-on fight, I think, at one point. But those two big coalitions made it through. But then Northern Coalition is known for having a pretty good team and for kind of making it into the final rounds of the AT. So I think that brings me up to date with pretty much what's going on. So what's happening now is all of these teams that are here in the feeder bracket winners have now gone through, and I'm going to link it in the description below. This is now the Alliance tournament that will be taking place in early November. It's a double elimination, so if you lose in your thing, you go into the elimination rounds, which are down below in blue. There will be loads and loads of matches. It's going to take place over a few weeks. And go and take a look and see if your favorite team is there. And I highly recommend watching it. I think the commentary was very good, and everyone is pretty hyped about it this year. And like I said, there's been a good number of viewers, and that was just for the feeder brackets as well. So I expect it to do very well in November, and I will definitely be watching. All right, so I'm going to close off on a couple of things. The first thing I'm going to close off on is you might want to check this out. I found this really interesting. It is a time lapse of the EVE Online influence map from all the way back in 2007. And it shows just kind of all the different alliances come and go, you know, people doing well, people doing bad, you know, people making big comebacks. So it goes on for quite a few minutes, and super interesting if you're interested in kind of the SOV warfare and the kind of the history of the various groups. You'll be surprised at some of the groups at how much space they actually held over certain amounts of time, and then how they shrunk back, and then, like I said, grew back and so forth. So do check that out. That is worth a look. Then just a couple of things. Toronto had an EVE meet. It's a fairly blurry picture. I apologize. It's the only photo that was posted on my Discord. But well done to Toronto for organizing a meet. It's their first meet in 18 months. So do check the Fleet Up site from CCP themselves. I'll link that in the description below as well. It will tell you about any EVE meets that are happening, and I expect more are going to be happening. And in fact, EVE London has been announced. I will be going to that. I am going to EVE Vegas. So Niall and I, that's Frost Ees OP, are going to EVE Vegas. We will also be going to EVE NT, which is taking place on November the 6th, which is about a week after. It is also, I think, the opening weekend of the Alliance tournament. So they're going to try and make a viewing party of it as well. They have a Discord, so you can go to the Discord and get all the details there on hotels and all that kind of good stuff as well. All right, so I think that's everything from me. Yep, I have covered everything. So I hope you enjoyed that. I hope you enjoyed the show. Like I said, it's been a pretty quiet week in EVE, but there's always news. There's always something going on that I'm hopefully able to report on. And always don't forget to like, subscribe, hit the bell icon for notifications, and mention me in your Corp Discord, Alliance Discord, etc. And I will see you on the next one. That's all from me. Bye.